Hello and welcome to this first episode. So let's just begin. How did the idea of endlessly winnable games come about? And it came about really from me being very, very stuck. I didn't know why I was stuck. I just knew that in my late teens and early 20s that I was very anxious and depressed. I really struggled in social situations and I felt terrible all the time. And it's kind of gone on for a few years. When I was about 22, 23, I had this real pivotal moment where I was sitting alone at home at my dad's house where I was living at the time, completely miserable, afraid to go out. And I said to myself, nothing is as bad as doing nothing. Nothing is as bad as doing nothing. And that was a big pivotal moment for me. I just began doing things. I didn't know what was wrong. Like I said, I was just very anxious and I tried stuff. And I've tried lots and lots and lots of things. From that day onwards, I pushed myself through fears. I did whatever I thought would help. And I've done some stupid stuff. I remember I watched this TV program and they described shame attacking exercises. And it actually comes from this type of therapy called REBT. Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy, that's created by Albert Ellis. And in it, they describe doing these exercises that make you very embarrassed and awkward in public. And I thought, okay, this sounds interesting. I'll try doing it. And so I would, on train journeys, I'd started doing improvised acting. So I thought that would help me with anxiety. So I was on my train journeys to and from improvised acting in London. I would do one of the things that they said, one of these shame attacking exercises, which was to announce the name of the train station to the entire carriage. And so I would do this. The train would stop at like Harrow and Wealdstone, and I would be standing up and I would say Harrow and Wealdstone to the whole carriage and just cringe, unbearably afterwards. And I would do this, for most of the stops. Some of them I might bottle out of, but for most of the stops I would do this on the journey. So from this point onwards, in my early 20s, I just began doing stuff. But my issues were really hard to resolve. I had no idea why I had them. As sort of the years have gone on, I kind of think all of it stems from the fact that I had a brain injury when I was 2 years old. And that left me very, very traumatized and with a lot of cognitive psychological issues, like not just emotional issues from, the sort of the emotional toll of suddenly almost dying and, having your brain totally messed up and disrupted and then not really having any aftercare for it, which is what happened. So I was very stuck in my early 20s with no idea why. I had no idea I had to do anything to this illness that I had. And whatever I tried seemed to fail. I didn't seem to get anywhere. I'd try something like this, like improvised acting or like announcing the name of a station, some shame attacking exercise, or I'd listen to a Tony Robbins recording and be on a buzz for a week, whatever it was, and it would always feel like nothing sticks. That was this phrase I used to say: nothing sticks, nothing sticks, nothing sticks. Whatever I do to help myself doesn't stick. It doesn't seem to last. I always seem to crash again. I always seem to get down again and depressed again. Still terrified and anxious, and So my problems seemed kind of never ending. They seemed, really intractable. And ultimately I started to think in terms of that I was in a game with myself, that there was something I had to keep learning. I had to sort of, learn this game or figure out this game about how my emotions were working. So I started to think in terms of games, and I'd have these really simple heuristics, like, facing your fears makes you more confident. So I'd sort of face my fears over and over again. So this sort of turned into a sort of a game, right? How far can I push myself, or this sort of thing. So the idea of like games emerged, across time, across all my efforts to sort of help myself. And then, as things evolved, I started to think in terms of endlessly winnable games, i.e. like some games have an end point. Because it seemed like my journey was never ending. I had to have this mindset of like a never ending kind of way of dealing with the problems. So I, in some ways, like failing so many times at like developing or changing just made me recommit each time. I kind of had to go, okay, I need to dig a little bit deeper. I need to go a little bit further. I need to try a little bit harder. I need to just continue on this growth path. And so I sort of had this perspective that formed that I had to engage in games which were never ending, because that was the only way in which I was eventually going to overcome the sort of obstacles that I seemed to be facing, which were inexplicable, right? Like wandering around in the dark, why I kept on feeling the way I did. It took me a long time to figure it out. But so, yeah, endlessly winnable games is how I started to think. I started to think in terms of, having, for example, some endlessly winnable games, so having gratitude or having a sense of humor, or, living more from your heart, becoming more heart-centered. There are certain ways of relating to yourself and to life, which if you continue to go down them, just seem to grow and expand and unfold and lead to a richer and richer and richer experience of life. And so this is how I started to think, if I'm going to play these games, okay, I want to make them winnable, but then I kind of want to make them endlessly winnable. And like, what are the approaches to life that just keep getting better if you keep pushing further along down them? So that is sort of how, the sort of thought process evolved in myself. And then along the way, I started working one-to-one with people. Back in 2010, I trained to be a cognitive hypnotherapist with this great organization called the Quest Institute. And I started seeing clients. I started working one-to-one, helping people with anxiety and fears and all that kind of stuff. I got, partly it was part of my journey. I wanted to figure myself out, and I thought, okay, well, I'll get really good at helping other people, and that might help me, and I'll help them. And, there was sort of this side of it. But I never shared this idea of like winnable games or endlessly winnable games, for a long, 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 long time. And just in the last few years, it started to come up more. Occasionally I'll share it with someone I'm supporting, and I'll say, there's a way of making this a winnable game, like what you're up to. Like, let's try and talk through that. So an example that comes to mind was someone who was really stuck with making friends. And so this idea of making friends was creating a lot of pressure for him. He didn't know what to do with it. And so we ended up coming up with this idea of like, making friends is kind of an impossible task in a way, because it's not up to you. There's something inherently kind of out of your control about making friends, because it's a dynamic. It takes a connection with another person. So the way we ended up talking about it was in terms of, finding people that were capable of offering the friendship he was looking for. And so it's a very different outlook to sort of be finding people that he could connect with. That's what he was doing instead. And that turned it into a winnable game, right? Because you can endlessly get better at finding people that you connect with. And then you can also get better at connecting more with those people, right? Also being open to people is an endlessly winnable game. Being, able to, when the right person arrives, to share and to talk and to be yourself with them. That's an endlessly winnable game. So, we would sort of, it was just a way of, like it's helping him with his issue, right? Of helping him to grow in the way he wanted to. But this idea of endlessly winnable games kind of stuck for him, and it came up, like a while later, he was like, yeah, I'm trying to make things more winnable games now. And so it just sort of evolved, and I ended up sharing it with more people, and it stuck with them too, whether it's the kind of career someone is looking into, or, how they're going to find work, the way that someone engages with their children or with their partner. It's a way of making it so that if you keep iterating this way of relating to it, it just gets better and better and better and better and better. So that is the idea of behind Endlessly Winnable Games, and that's one of the themes that I'll be sharing a lot on this podcast. So join me for the journey. I hope you found this interesting, and look forward to sharing with you on the next one. Okay, bye. Subscribe, leave a comment, like.